Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. It is me, once again, screaming into the void of the internet. I got something I want to talk about that's, I guess, not conventional, considering I don't really talk about anime or anything. And, just a heads up, I'm not really an anime nerd or anything. I've watched my fair share of it every now and again, but I'm certainly nowhere near as enthusiastic as other people are, especially in this community. A lot of people in this community, they cope with anime. They like their video games and anime, but I've always been more onto the video game side. There's different kinds of anime that I like, but it's usually just not really my thing. But I kind of want to talk about the fact that, the reason why you hate the ending for Deku, for My Hero Academia, is because it's relatable. And I'm telling you this right now, a lot of people are ripping on this, and I think the joke's freaking hysterical, and I know I touched on this in my last video, basically near the end. If anyone's listening to my dumb arse throughout the entire video, right? The fact of the matter is, Deku's ending, you hate it because it's too relatable. And this isn't me defending it, but this is me, just talking about, doomer stuff, right? We have all been promised when we were young ages that, you can do anything, you can, achieve anything, you're special, you're unique. And, I went into detail in one of my videos about, why I don't really think we're nearly as special as we think we are. You're told all this stuff, and then reality hits in. And reality F's you in your arsehole, and reality slugs you in the jaw, and you realize, listen, dude, 9 times out of 10, realistically speaking, I'm going to be stuck doing something I freaking hate, perhaps for the rest of my life, A lot of people work because they have to, not because they like to. And, at the same time, you can blame them, because certain people, even in spite of, the situations that they're in, they do not attempt to change their circumstance. They say, okay, I'm working, and I'm just going to keep working, and working, and working, and they don't ever try and say, I'm just going to try and find a way to get out of this, and try and get financially stable, or at least get to the point where it's I could take a freaking month's vacation, most people are never in that position because they're, 9 times out of 10 into the consumer grind set where it's it's never enough for them. Even if they earned, X amount of dollars, they need to start earning, even more than that, because it's the typical crap. Because society runs on this illusion that you can never be satisfied with what you have. And for the most part, you're always usually taught that you should aspire for more. And partially that's true, I think. We should always aspire to achieve something, it doesn't have to be anything grand. It can just be something, small. Let's say it's a figure that you want, body-wise. Let's say it's some kind of achievement that you want. You want to become, say, the best, swimmer, a good runner, wherever it is in life, right? But a lot of us start aspiring for something that is literally, for all intents and purposes, for most people, unachievable. And none of us are willing to accept that, even though our parents told us that. And, you have to wonder, why is it so hard to believe that? I understand that a lot of us were told that, you're going to get this happy ending, you're special, you're unique and all this stuff. But when you really objectively look at life, especially during your childhood, not just your parents, but just adults in general, right? And, I say this as an adult myself, even though, I don't know, man. I don't even feel like an adult sometimes. I feel like all the adults are children still, and I don't know crap about life like that anyway, so it's, I don't know what the heck an adult is, But what I'm saying is adults lie to you all the time, and, they tell you about Boogeyman and Tooth Fairy and, Santa Claus, all this stuff, and you buy that, you buy into that. You buy into Cupid, you buy into the Halloween stuff, you buy into the monsters under your bed, you buy into all this crap. But then you're told that you are not entitled to a happy ending, and this is, catastrophic to you. Why? Are you unique to the fact that you've been lied to, all this time? Is it really so hard to realize that even about that, you were lied to, Because, for me personally, again, that hasn't ever been a problem for me, once I was told this, because I feel growing up how I grew up, and it's not about some kind of woe is me story, and so I'll kind of just share it, and I've shared it before, I dealt with physical abuse at the hands of my father, And so, like, I kind of just grew up faster because, you know, I knew that, okay, like, when I go home, like, you know, like, there's danger and stuff like that. It's not like, you know, a lot of people where they can go home and then, you know, you're usually supposed to be safe from danger. And I was, like, concerned with stuff, like, at home because that was just kind of what I went through. So I knew that, you know, I had to, like, accept things for what they were fast, you know. And that's maybe this, like, survival brain kicking in and stuff like that. That, you know, like, you start accepting things fast. Because some people just mature faster. And usually I find that the ones who mature faster are just, like, the ones who went through some crap at home. Like, seriously. But what I'm trying to say is this, dude. They already tell us this when we're young. And they lie to us. They lie to us endlessly. And they don't tell you the truth. And just look at, you know, like, if you're in... Well, I can't just say, like, you know, the Nibba community, because look at how many people are probably, realistically speaking, do you even know your father? Like, realistically speaking, like, I feel like you don't even know your father until you take a freaking test these days. Even if you look like that sucker, like, you don't know, man. You don't know. Like, just look at how many mothers are lying to their children about who their dad is. Because they were whores and whatnot. Like, you don't even know your father a lot of times, like, until you actually get tested. Spend your whole life being raised by this person, and I guess, like, yeah, they're your father figure and stuff like that, and yeah, they can still be your father, perhaps in the title, but not in the literal sense, because biology, right? But I'm saying this because, you know, a lot of people really feel like they're entitled to happy endings, and I'll try and get back to, like, anime in a second, right? Think about it for a moment, right? How many times do people believe that fiction needs to end with the hero getting the girl and riding off in the sunset happy? How long have we been told that? And they all lived happily ever after. When in reality, we've always known that that's horse crap. And perhaps that's why we're so obsessed with it in fiction. We're obsessed with the fact that, okay, finally, I'm in control of something, and I'm going to write this happy ending. They will have a happy ending. It won't be like me, you know, I won't be stuck at this dead-end job and whatnot, but in fiction, I will have this happy ending. I will have this family. I will have someone who loves me. But it's fiction. And fiction is so much just a fantasy of what we truly desire reality to be. Because in reality, we don't have that. In reality, you know, you're usually not the special one. In reality, you're usually not the main character of your own life. And it's not because you can't be. It's because there are a lot of factors in place that stop you from being that person. And a lot of it's usually just society and fear. You know, you are so obsessed with fitting into society and afraid of not fitting in that no matter how much you'll stand out, even if it means being, you know, the master of your own life, you won't do it. You won't do it because you're too afraid. And this isn't me, like, you know, just talking to people in general. This is just me, like, talking in, you know, to everyone, even myself, you know. There are things that so many of us are just unwilling to do because we are so concerned about our self-image of other people. Which is, it's always fascinated me because it's like, especially in this community, like, not this, well, I guess this community, but in the West in general, right? Like, we don't have a trust-based society. We don't trust each other. We know that we can't trust each other. Like, people, I listen to, like, some old-timers will talk about how, like, they used to leave the doors unlocked and stuff like that because they could trust people in the neighborhood. They would, like, just let them walk in and stuff like that, but that's not how it is here, you know? Like, that's not how it is here. Heck, I was even looking at a documentary about the Inuit people, and they were talking about how, like, you know, before, like, you know, like, colonizers came, you know, you didn't see homeless people with them, you know, because it's like it's ice and stuff, like, it's a harsh environment, so you just look out for each other and stuff like that. Theirs is a very trust-based culture. Does that mean that you're not going to have freaking insane people in that stuff? I doubt that, no. But they're still, for the most part, a high trust-based society and stuff like that, you know. Whereas we're not like that. And yet our image, I feel like we care so much, sometimes in a lot of aspects more than other people, because it's like, when you look at these people, like, who are, like, you know, tribal and stuff like that, they don't have nearly as much, like, say, anxiety, you know, as we do and stuff like that. They don't care. They do the most, like, weird crap, and they just don't really care about, like, fitting in. You know, like, there are some very odd fellows, even in that community. Not Inuit, you know, well, I'm not just saying Inuit, you know what I mean, like, tribal people in general. that they just don't care about fitting in. It just is what it is, and they just stay true to themselves, and, you know, maybe they'll have a few friends, maybe they won't, and that's just that. But us, there is such an obsession to fitting in, even though these people won't give you the shirt off their back. They won't pick you up when you're down. Like, if you were freaking having a seizure on the sidewalk, they'd walk right over you and not give a rat's arse. You know, maybe if you were a woman, they care, but if you're a guy, then go F yourself. You know, maybe someone might call 911, but for the most part, they're just not going to get involved. And I partially don't blame them, because you're in a day and age where just you calling the freaking ambulance, they're going to, all right, well, we picked you up, so do you have like $5,000 and stuff like that? You know, like, so I get it, partially, but, you know, we're not really willing to be main characters and stuff like that. And one of the aspects that I say that we're not willing to be main characters is because you're not really willing to, again, stand out. You know, you're the NPC, especially men. Like, just think about, like, let's say, what's that chick's name? I don't really watch One Piece like that, but I do remember, like, distinctly watching that, rescue arc with Ace and stuff like that. The chick, the Amazon Queen chick, Hancock, okay, there. Like, one of her special things is, like, you get seduced by her and she turns you into stone, like Medusa style, right? And all you see when you see that are, like, just men and women looking at her, adoring her with heart eyes, right? And just look at how many men and women adore people like celebrities, you know, millionaires, like just people of influence with heart eyes. All of them look just like those background characters, just NPCs, just like filler characters that you don't give a rat's arse about, because they're obsessed with this person that people feel they are supposed to worship, that they feel like they're supposed to be envious of. And too many people are unwilling to, like, just stand out on their own, you know, and just be themselves. And that's kind of why, like, one of the biggest reasons that I enjoy a lot of this community is there's a lot of people just beginning to accept the fact that, you know what, I need to be selfish. I need to prioritize my life. And, you know, if you can ride that with me, you know, if you can be a friend, if you can be a comrade, then that's a good thing. But if you can't, then I'm not going to stop, like, you know, who I am to do this. And that's one of the many things about this community that I do like. That there are a lot of people beginning to prioritize self and putting their self ahead, because you're told a lot that selfishness is bad. And I'd say that selfishness is bad under certain circumstances. Obviously, if you have an attachment to someone and there's a stranger and there's a choice between you saving the person that you know and the person that's a stranger, you're going to prioritize the person that you know, and that is a form of selfishness. But that's natural. You have formed a bond with them. You've cultivated this bond. And to betray them by, you know, prioritizing a stranger instead of the person that you know, you're likely going to sever that bond with that person. So we selfishly, whether you know it or not, subconsciously prioritize those bonds. And it is selfish. But again, it's at the same time natural. But at the same time, selfishness can get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm going to prioritize myself to the extent that I start effing other people over. And you see this done throughout societies a lot through the hoarding of resources. How they somehow say, okay, I'm going to lay claim to X amount of, like, land with X amount of resources to prioritize myself as, like, the kingpin, and I'm going to have all you cocksuckers underneath me because, you know, I'm better and stuff like that. It's not just like you just saying, okay, I'm going to prioritize a bit of the land and this is my space and don't come here, selfishness. It's, I'm going to prioritize tons of it, lay claim to all of it, and you will be my subordinate kind of selfishness. So, you know, there's kinds of selfishness, right? But at the end of the day, all of us can, like, acknowledge one thing, whether we want to admit it or not. A lot of us really do envy, like, fiction, because we really wish, for the most part, that we could be the main characters in our life. And a lot of times you feel like a background character. And I'd say one of the biggest reasons is a conversation I was sharing with my friend. And I know that I bring up my friend a lot because he's essentially my brother, right? He kind of told me, like, you know, these days he doesn't really look forward to anything because he sees how evil the world is. He sees how wicked the world is, and everyone is acknowledging it. And that's good that they're acknowledging it, but what are they really willing to do about it? So many people say it's time for a crusade, but are you really willing to fight? The answer to that question is, for the most part, no. Most people aren't willing to fight. Am I willing to fight? Yeah, I am. And I'll tell you why. It's mainly because I just don't give a rat's arse about life, you know. One of the biggest funny things to me is that despite us being in an age of nihilism, despite us being in an age of so-called, agnosticism and atheism, we value our lives more than any point than people who, once claimed to be as faithful as they were, whether or not you think that's a good thing or not. These people who were religious, be it Buddhism, be it Christianity, be it Hinduism, all these things, they fought and died for their beliefs. You're one of these people now at this point, not saying you, but like you hear people at this point, saying like, oh, like, I can't wait for death, non-existence and all this stuff, and yet they are terrified of dying. So much so that this culture knows that, and they manipulate the hell out of them and to bully them into submission. If you didn't really care about dying, the crusade would have already happened. Like these cocksuckers in government would have already been overthrown. The people who were willing to overthrow the government knew that a lot of those people were going to die. They knew that a good amount of these citizens are going to die doing this, but they did it anyway. We are in an age where people have been completely pussified. All of the retaliation has been whipped out of you. You just want to stay in your lane, mind your own business and stuff like that, and not cause trouble. But the fact of the matter is, sure, you might want that, but do your rulers abide by that? Your rulers are more than willing to start trouble, and they don't give a rat's arse about staying in their lane. They like pushing you around, but they don't follow those same rules. That's how that works. And that's why, in my opinion, right, I think we need to start getting into the position where we just don't care about life as much anymore. Because when you care about life too much, when you're terrified of dying, you'll just become this. You'll just be the freaking NPC in your own life. You'll be the background character, the filler character in your own life. You'll never make a decision that will really impact you. You will believe that you do, but it doesn't. All it really does is keeps you in the community and keeps your position, air quotes, secure in that community. But is it really? Is it really secure when, at the end of the day, you don't live how you want to live? You don't do what it is that you want to do. You're just doing what you feel you need to do in order to appease that community, even though that community doesn't really give a rat's arse about you. And even then, let's just say that they do. You have to understand this. Again, like I say, and I'm going to keep saying this, there are rarely solutions in life. There are tons and tons of trade-offs. Something that a lot of people don't want to admit by a lot of these like conservatives trying to say, oh, we need to go back to traditionalism, blah, 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 traditionalism, right? Even in that community, sure, they didn't operate by, colored hair and this, that, and the other, but make no mistakes. What did they do? Well, number one, you were expected to just value people more than yourself. You were expected to be selfless a lot more in that community. And like I said just a little bit ago, there's nothing wrong with being selfish within reason. But they expected you, they demanded you to be selfless in that community, right? So much so that if you were a male, say a bachelor like me, and a lot of men right now, because a lot of men aren't married and stuff like that, you were just expected to just die on a moment's notice. If your country said, you're going to go fight this guy, conservatives demand, get off your arse and go fight. That's what they think. They're expecting that. If, say, a woman was getting attacked, conservatives, especially, and again, if you don't believe me, look up these instances about like these shipwrecks. They demanded that you put those women first. Women and children first. As if your life doesn't have value. As if your life doesn't matter. Why? Why do you have to do that? Says who? Says who? Why do you have to do it? Is it your wife? Is it your mom? Is it your kid? If it's not, why do you have to do it? And they did not ask this question because they didn't feel like it was worth asking this question. They just expected it out of you. Because that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there are just really just trade-offs. And rarely in any culture can you really live the way that you want to live and essentially fit in. You have to just start accepting that you have to just not give a rat's arse. In order to be the main character in your own life, you just can't give a rat's arse about what other people think of you. You know, if they think that you're a moral, upstanding person, they could think that. If they think that you're a hedonistic bastard, they could think that. You, at the end of the day, know what you are, whether you want to admit it or not. You know what you are. You know, for example, I know what I am. I'll tell you what I am right now. I'm a cold, jaded bastard. Is what it is. I can accept that. I'm a cold, jaded bastard. I have a right to be angry about how I have been treated throughout my life. I have a right to wake up to a society that hates me and treats me like garbage, and I have a right to feel mad about that. I am jaded. Am I depressed about that? No. I think a lot of guys get depressed when they should be getting pissed. They should be getting passionate. They should be getting freaking furious. You know? And so I dedicate my life, personally, me, to trying to be as free as possible, because I will not be controlled by this crap. I will either be free or die trying, because I don't care about life. That's just me. I know what I am. But do a lot of people know they are? Can they acknowledge that? Or will they try and say that, you know, I'm a good person and stuff like that, I'm this, that, and the other. I don't say I'm a good person. I know I'm not a freaking good person. You know, I try and do moral things, but I'm not going to call it the right thing. There is an instance where you know what the right thing is, but I'm not going to say that it is the right thing, because at the same time, I'm prioritizing me. For example, let's say that there's a woman about to get struggle snuggled. I am not intervening unless I know her. Why? Because even if I kick this guy's arse, the court will say, well, that was excessive force, bucko. And for all I know, that's her boyfriend. And she could say, oh, don't hurt my boyfriend. And then she might get with the guy after I kick his arse anyway, so who knows? You know, it is what it is. I'm not going to do that. And even if it's something like a kid, it's like, maybe I couldn't control myself then, because I really just don't like seeing kids get predated on, but it doesn't guarantee that, you know, my life's intact. It doesn't guarantee that I'd even survive the encounter, or the court would view me as a hero. You know, they could lock me up forever because I assaulted someone else, right? This is the kind of world that you're living in, you know? So I'm not going to sit around here and come and say that, oh, I'm a good guy and stuff. You know, I've said in the previous video, hey, this world doesn't want heroes. Don't try and be one. Don't freaking throw away your life trying to be one. And this is why I say, you know, what it really takes to be the main character is just not giving a rat's arse. You just can't care. You just can't care. And that's probably why one of the reasons that the kind of animes that I like are really the animes that other people don't, you know, like maybe Berserk. You know, a lot of people like Berserk, but I like Claymore, Berserk. I like a lot of dark fantasy stuff, you know, because a lot of people feel as though you're entitled to this happy ending, and when I look at that stuff, it's just not really. Like, freedom is going to cost you something, you know. That's why I like Metal Gear Rising a lot. You know, what is his name? Blade Wolf, yeah. Freedom is going to cost you something. What are you willing to pay for freedom? You know, freedom's not free. I know free's in it, but even then, you know, all it really is a trade-off. You're going to have to start doing something as a payment for your life, right? Even if I was, like, nomadic, even if I had, like, some land and stuff like that, you know, my shackle to the land would be, you know, like, me towing the land, me hunting the land. That still costs something, but I'm just more willing to pay that price, right? It's something that fascinates me, because I'm telling you folks, I feel like we really have to just start accepting that, listen, this happy ending crap that you were promised, it's just, it's called the American dream for a reason. You know, it's a dream. It's a fantasy. It's not reality. I know that we're obsessed with dreams. And without dreams, you know, like without hope, you get into a weird position, because you get too much of it, you're insane. You get too little of it, you don't have motivation for anything. Right? But there are just some dreams that you really just have to let go of for your own benefit. It'll just drive you insane if you don't. And one of those that I said again is like this happy ending nonsense. You have to let it go, man. And I know that might hurt. Well, I know it will hurt. But the sooner that you do, and the sooner that you accept it, the better. Because listen, you don't have to be damned and doomed into, you know, a life of just, you know, like, you know, get back at, like, you know, My Hero Academia, like, you know, freaking burger grease and stuff. You don't have to be doomed into that, you know. But there are seasons of unhappiness that you might go through in life to get to a point where maybe you can be a bit more happy, you know. Happiness, after all, is temporal. Suffering, is temporal. Joy is temporal. Pain is temporal. You know? Yeah, life's full of suffering and pain and joy and all this stuff, but all of it at the end of the day is just temporal. You just don't know how long it's going to last. You know? It's just kind of one of those things. You know, heck, I'm going to have to be in the same position, putting the fries in the bag, little bro. Maybe. I don't know. I hope not, in terms of, like, the job. I would prefer if it was something else, but if I get that, then I'll just get that, and I'll, you know, hopefully go to trade school. Or maybe we'll blow each other up, because, not to get too off topic, but apparently, like, with what's going on with, like, you know, Russia and Ukraine, at this point, considering that they're actually attacking Russia, considering that Russia and China are best friends, that, you know, they can do a little something, so. Hopefully we don't get pulled into that, but even if we were, like, I'm not fighting. Like, I'm really not. And if they threaten me with jail time, I feel like that's, if you really wanted a reason to, like, pop those crusades off, that'll probably be the thing, because then they're going to say, after all of this, you're going to try and take us to jail? Oh yeah, we're going to just start. We're just going to just pop off. At least the people that actually care to, they'll pop off. Everyone else, they'll just probably just, you know, let me just get my dear boots and just call it a day. You know? But I think I'll go ahead and just conclude it right here, you know? I hope that I wasn't too all over the place, because like I said, I wasn't really going to mainly talk about anime, you know? Like, it was just mainly a talking point, per se, because even though I don't really know about My Hero Academia a lot like that, you know, I recognize certain characters, obviously, but people are completely pissed with this ending, and even I myself can admit that it's a stupid ending. But I think it's because subconsciously all of us are demanding that fiction always ends on a positive note. And you know that life, a lot of times, does not always get a happy ending. In fact, it rarely gets a happy ending. Life can be very cruel. And it often is. And so considering that this person has the ability to write fiction, why does he have to get this ending? The ending that basically sounds like all of our endings. Oh, don't worry, you can do this, you're special, blah, 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 blah. Next thing you know, you grow up, and you're just punching a clock. Am I still special, Dad? Am I still special, Mom? Is that what's going through your head, you know? Gets to that point. And then, you know, maybe some people, like I said, you know, I do think you should ask. I do think you should ask your parents, even though they're not going to want to, because they're like, oh, crap, are they actually holding me accountable? You know, what was your plan for me? Why'd you have me if you doomed me into, like, wage slavery? I think it's worth asking. But I'm going to go ahead and conclude this here. I hope you got something out of it, you know. Let me know your thoughts if you care to speak. Because I know that some people are listening to this, and they're probably just like me, in the sense that, you know, I don't comment on every video, but, you know, if you are feeling something from my videos, if you do feel like there's something that you can take, you know, feel free to give me your thoughts, because I do like listening to other people, you know. So, hope you guys enjoyed. God bless. I'll see you in the next one.